Hello, what do you think? Seductive. That's nice.
It's really good.
Hello and welcome to the Women Over 50 Film Festival Q&A for the Past in the Present strand. My name is Felicity Beckett and I am the Video Content Coordinator for Picturehouse Cinemas, and it has been my honour to have been involved with WOFF since its beginnings 6 years ago now. I am delighted to welcome a truly global representation of filmmakers from Georgia, Canada, the USA, Germany and the UK, united by not only the WOFF banner and the past in the present screenings, but by being completely unique in their storytelling. Thank you all filmmakers for joining us today. I have so enjoyed watching all of your work. I would now like to ask you to all introduce yourselves with a wave, giving your name, your title and the film. And we're going to go in the order of the screenings. So, and also if you could say where you are in the world, and so people can appreciate the scale of this event. So starting with Berta.
Hello, my name's Anwen Carlisle. I directed Berta and I'm in Cardiff in South Wales.
And then Champ, so David.
Hello. My name is David Jester, and I'm one of the directors of Champ 5 here in Maine.
Kathleen, would you like to go next?
Hi, I'm Kathleen Strouse. I'm the producer director of Champ 5, and I'm in Washington, D.C.
Hello, I am Steen Starr. I am the director of Older Than What, and I'm speaking to you from Vancouver, Canada.
Hello, I'm Roswitha Chesher. I'm the filmmaker of the film Porcelain, and I'm based in the UK in London, but I'm currently in the woods in Germany.
Hello, I'm Irine Javakhidze from Tbilisi, Georgia, and my film is Selfie with the Gastove.
Hi, I'm Sherry Galkey. I'm one of the 4 directors of Trudy's Goose, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California.
Hey there, I'm Jamie. I'm the director of Wings.
Hello, hi, I'm the co-writer of Wings. I'm Carla Fraser, and I made Wings with Jamie.
Thank you so much all. I will now begin the Q&A, and again we will go in screening order. So first of all, I'm going to go to Anwen Carlisle with regards to Berta. So Anwen, can you tell us about your wonderful Welsh language short film, how the story came about and what inspired you to make the film at this time?
Well, I was quite lucky, really. It was part of a training programme. I'm an actress by trade. I've directed a lot of theatre, but I was keen to step into the world of directing film. And we have this wonderful setup called It's My Shout. And it's basically a chance for anybody to step into the industry in any department at all, but you're mentored throughout. So that was my starting point. So everyone on that set, all the writers, everyone. So the writers had pitched ideas, they'd been finalised into 8 scripts that were decided to be made. Same with directors, we were auditioned and interviewed. So in that respect, I was sort of handed this film rather than chose. So I sort of stepped into the dark. What was wonderful for me was I had a director by my side at all times. So although all the decisions were myself and the guy who was filming, we had someone with us at all times just to check. So that was wonderful. It was a real cushioning sort of experience, which was lovely for a first time. The film itself couldn't have been better, really. It was the story in itself. I read it first and thought it was quite a basic story, just about this young kids, so young and old. The more I worked on it, the more I dissected, and certainly when we were shooting. And also, I think for me, particularly the reactions to screenings have really shown me how many layers this film actually has. And I think you can watch it and you can have different experiences depending on where your head is, really. I've watched it different ways myself, which has been lovely.
I couldn't agree more. For me, I felt that it was looking to heal the wound between the past and the present in a way.
Absolutely.
Yes, and with the young and the old. So I wondered if you could expand on that a bit.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that's the crux of it, really. Apart from the lovely light-hearted story, you've got the granddaughter, Caddy, and then the grandmother, who, although it's never said, has dementia. And it's the barrier has come up, and Caddy, the granddaughter, is petrified and has shut herself off, doesn't want to know, because she can't handle the fact that her grandmother doesn't recognise her. And what's lovely is I look at Berta as a guardian angel. She almost steps in unannounced, sort of fate maybe, and absolutely crushes this barrier. And also I think, being sort of creative people that we are, it's through the medium of dance and music that connection is made again. And I think that's another added layer that's lovely.
Absolutely, and that's so important in dementia as well, isn't it? The music and yeah. And can you talk to me briefly about the choice to use the English-Welsh mix?
I think that's a very natural thing in Wales. I'm a fluent Welsh speaker. We speak Welsh at home. 10% of the population is fluent in Welsh, but obviously the outside world, we are constantly flitting from English to Welsh, and I think anyone who's bilingual does, regardless of if your country only speaks one language or two. So I think for me, particularly, we filmed it in an area called Merthyr, which is sort of a valley area where the language is present but not used daily by everybody. So it's a natural way to speak, I think, particularly for the young kids. My kids, you were brought up speaking Welsh. All their education is in Welsh. We speak Welsh at home, but the language flows very easily between Welsh and English, and I think that was important to reflect really reality.
Yes, it was wonderful. It was so musical, like not just the dance and the music, but actually hearing the language, and I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Anwen.
Thank you.
So we'll go on next to Champ 5. So we have Paul and Kathleen, the co-directors, and so can you tell us how you came across the amazing Rita Wiley or Wiley? Sorry, I can't remember how to pronounce her name.
The inspiration for Champ 5 was actually the Beatles' I Am the Walrus, and the phrase in there, Semolina Pilchard. I was heading up to Maine to study documentary filmmaking last September, and I had never been to Maine. It's a 12-hour drive from where I live. And so I was researching local stories to film as part of the course. I was reading local news articles, Googling obvious things like Maine lobster and Maine politics and Senator Susan Collins' re-election. And on a whim, I Googled Maine pilchard. And one of the first stories that popped up was about the closure of the last Maine sardine cannery in 2010. And the article featured women who had worked in canneries packing sardines, and most of them had worked there for decades. There was a photo of a woman who had packed fish for 55 years. And I tried to imagine what it was like to do a tedious, dangerous, low-paying job for 55 years. And I became curious about the inner lives of those women. It was loud in the plant. They were paid by the can, so they had to move fast, so they weren't there talking. And I just wondered, was the motion of packing fish, it was repetitive? Was it meditative? What did they think about? What were their dreams? And that was the beginning of a research odyssey that led to Rita Willie. At first, when I started researching the story, it was not about the sardine packing contest. It really was, I was thinking about the women that worked in these plants. And when I pitched this to the rest of the, to the other students there, I was greeted with a lot of blank looks and silence. And at first, nobody, no one else, we were working in teams and no one really wanted to join this team. So I was just, making phone calls, reading, talking to people in local fish markets, trying to track down someone who actually started, created with her husband, a sardine museum, a roadside sardine museum. So I thought maybe, well, the movie would be about that quixotic quest. And then David, who lives in Maine, joined the team. And so he, brought some real understanding of the setting and the local people and the local industry. And so, and Paul joined. Paul is from Canada. He couldn't be on the call today. We went from there.
Fantastic. And so David, can you tell us about, so this is your hometown. So what do these women represent? And can you talk to me about the past coming into the present with, for me, it was like watching history, almost like these women are almost anachronisms, but they're alive and they're relevant and their story is very important.
Yeah. So I'm originally from New York and I moved to Maine probably 20 years ago. And as I studied culture of Maine up here, I noticed that Maine is very romanticized, and the tale that everyone tells is about the hardscrabble coast and the men that live on the coast. The women's stories are usually very absent from, any kind of, any of the narrative in the state of Maine. And when Kathleen came up with this, the sardine canneries were really disgusting and really horrible conditions. And she found Rita, who loved it. She's probably one of the few people I think we would ever be able to meet that would say the sardine industry was something that gave her, this pride and this pride and ownership in something. And it's so interesting to see now that these stories are so absent from Maine. Women's stories in Maine are so, it's not even there. And when Kathleen came up with this, I think it was gold, for lack of better terms. It was so perfect. And as we went along, everyone knows lobsters. Everyone knows fishermen. Everyone knows the, the small boats that used to go out and pull the fish, but no one talked about the canneries. And it was really a great experience to meet Rita and to see and to hear the stories of someone that actually lived and worked in that.
It was a wonderful, wonderful film. Thank you so much, both of you. And so going on now to Older Than What and Steen Starr. Steen, can you tell me how you became interested in making this documentary and what moved you to actually make it?
Well, the film is about LGBTQ people who are older, and I found myself as a queer woman getting older. I think probably after I turned 50, I started to think about my own aging and my place within the queer community. The queer community can be very youth focused. And so I had made one short film and I thought, well, I could make another one. And I thought it was about sort of the ageism. It was about the perspectives of older people. It was about the experience of being LGBTQ. and a different kind of invisibility, I guess. So I just, I wanted to talk to older LGBTQs, and I didn't have any specific age range. I just, if somebody identified themselves as feeling older, they were, you know, somebody that I was interested in talking to. And there were people, I approached quite a few people. I just sort of went to places and, you know, in some cases like a seminar specifically for older people or clubs or things. Two women from the UK who are in the film I met because they came to World Pride, which was in Toronto, where I actually live, in before the film, 2014, I want to see maybe. And Jane Trays was giving a talk about her work interviewing older lesbians. So I went to that and I talked to Jane. So, and there were people I spoke to who actually said, no, I'm not ready to talk on camera about being older than whatever. So for me, it was about visibility. It was about gathering those perspectives. It wasn't necessarily about documenting things that people who've gone before me or gone before generations have done. But it turned out that because of sort of the cohort, I guess, they were people who, a lot of them had done things to break barriers or to to gain rights. I had a question in the film that obviously you've seen that about you know, what's the most outrageous thing you've done, and I just was getting at like the ageism of people look at older people and think, oh well, they've never jaywalked or they've never drank too much or anything, you know. So but that question elicited these stories of, well, I came out as gay on Canada's national radio, you know, 20-30 years ago, or I was diagnosed with AIDS when I was, you know, in 1984, and I'm still alive, and I became an activist. So those stories are highlighted in the film. But so I didn't go after historical stories, but I think just that perspective and that. So and I think bringing that knowledge and that activity of older people back to the forefront was also kind of what I wanted to do.
Yeah, and I just thought that the category that you're in, the past, in the present, for this documentary is exactly what you're trying to say. It's kind of like we're all relevant, you know. This is, you know, and it is such a shame that people feel consigned to a kind of dustbin in a way because of their age. And I thought it was very sweet how vulnerable people were when they said their age. But also I wanted to ask you about the title, because Older Than What is kind of liberating people from that shame. It's kind of, you know, what the Dead Sea Scrolls, you know. Could you talk to me a bit about choosing the title?
Yes, for sure. I'd love to, because I love the title. And I think for one, like you say, maybe it's liberating, but it's also, it is relative. Older is a relative term. And people use the word older as in, oh, she's older, without saying old. And one of the things that Jane Trays does in her work with older lesbians, she uses the word old because in a sense of wanting to reclaim that it's not horrible to be old. And the title actually came, so everybody in the film is LGBTQ except my mother, who left this world in May of this year. And she was 90 or about to be 90 at the time. And part of me wanted to get her on film and record her because I knew she was getting older. And the other is I just thought, well, you know, she's an older person and she's witty usually. Yes. So I was setting up my camera and I was like, okay, Mom, you know, we're going to do this thing. And I used the euphemism of older. I said, I'd like you to talk about what it's like to be older. And right away she looked at me and she said, older than what? So, you know, what is it, this question you're asking me, and how old do you think I am, you know? And so as I was doing the editing and stuff, I thought, yeah, that's the title. And then it turned into a nice question of like, what are you older than? And then people had amusing answers to it. Yeah.
Steen, thank you so much. I'm really sorry about your mum, and you know, she really brought an incredible energy to your film, and I think that's really lovely that you managed to immortalize her there, you know. So congratulations, it was a really great watch.
Thank you.
So thank you, and we're going on to now Roswitha to talk about Porcelain. So Roswitha, this was a really beautiful and unusual piece. Can you talk about how it came about and what it means for you to have made this film at this time?
So the film came about because I work a lot with dancers. I trained as a dancer a long time ago and then became a self-taught filmmaker. And a colleague of mine who's a dance artist working at Trinity Lab and in London runs a weekly class for people to come who have had head trauma, injuries, road accidents, surgery, cancer, whatever. And she said, and I've often done, gone in and done work about projects, film about projects, but she said, she came and said, I've got this couple who I really love how they work together. So the husband came and supported, so Ian came and supported Sheila every week in the class and said, I don't know what, but there's something beautiful about how they work together and I'd love to make a dance for camera film. So that's how we started, and she literally said it's this kind of movement that he does towards her to help her. And that was it that we had to start off with, and then we worked with the idea of making tea and stories, and basically there are a couple that have been together for 40 years and have a family, and Sheila worked a lot with them in the studio on different movement tasks and ideas, and then I came and played around with cameras with different ideas, and then we had 2 shoot days which were really special, and none of the material could be choreographed because Sheila couldn't actually retain any material to remember. She would remember that they'd rehearsed it, but nothing was particularly choreographed. So it was all improvised in the moment. And so there was just Sheila and Ian, myself, and Stella, and had this lovely location. And yeah, it was such a precious time. We had 2 days, 4 hours each day, that even though you want to make a product, you want to make a film, it was also, well, if nothing ever happens from this, the couple, that Sheila and Ian and Stella and I have had a wonderful experience together. This moment, I'll always remember it. So that was lovely. And then editing, I don't think I've ever been as anxious editing anything before, because I'd seen what I'd seen through the camera and rehearsals and that time, but then when you see it on your screen, there's something else that I didn't, and I think because they're not actors, because they're a couple, and their honesty on it was like, oh my word, I hope I do justice to what they have given us as an audience, and it just felt such a privilege. And in the end, it's a very simple story. It's a couple of who love each other, completely devoted to each other, and but then you see the sense of loss, and I'd always seen it as Ian caring for Sheila, and then what I really noticed on screen was, oh my words, she's really looking after him through this process of her deterioration, and etc. And so again, with audiences, as somebody said earlier, it is really interesting how you see people's reaction, and actually perhaps it's I was going to say, is it with an audience of older people, but occasionally sometimes people say, oh, that was really cute, and you're like, okay, that's fine. It's fine, because we all have different experiences. But then I've had like my brother-in-law watched it and just completely burst into tears, and I was like, really, like, gosh, and so I think perhaps people relate to it in different ways, and so yes, I'm very happy to have made it.
Absolutely. And I think, for me, when I think about things like in this category, past in the present, what I absolutely loved about it was this was an elderly couple. What I felt were doing, I had no idea about the choreography, but I felt they were doing a modern dance, and I felt like I was watching something incredibly intimate that I hadn't seen on screen before. And that older people in intimacy is a really tricky subject, and watching it, I didn't feel at all voyeuristic, and I didn't feel at all put off. I just thought it was a really interesting way of watching a mature relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, completely. And I think what they I mean, my husband, when he watches it, he just feels so of Ian's loss of like past into present, and they have a new path at the moment of how that's developing, and how that's going to, you know, ultimately end. And but there's so much history between them, and I think that's what, you know, it's often, not always, but, you know, sometimes love stories of very young glamorous couples, but they're not glamorous. They're just you know, two people who have so much history between them. And it's interesting, the question to Steen about the title, and I love how titles suddenly just plonk, you know, and I'd had this idea about the teacups, and the shot I was most nervous of was when the teacup smashes at the end, and I was like, Stella, I don't know if I dare ask them, can I film this? Because to me, it was just like, whether it is, and it doesn't matter whether it is to other people or not, but for me, it was just felt really significant. And then I was editing, and I was like, oh, porcelain, strength and fragility, you know, kind of, I just love how they titles, you like, and then it just plops, you know, into place, and it just seemed, so yeah, I think that's what's their honesty in, I think, is what makes it, hopefully it doesn't come across as twee, because it is just about them, and they're not telling any lies, they're just, or pretending anything, it's just them being them, basically.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Roswitha. And so moving on to Selfie with the Gastove, and please forgive me if I get this completely wrong. It's Irine Javakhidze?
Javakhidze, yes. Javakhidze.
Javakhidze. Thank you so much for joining us. And
thank you for.
Can you? So you're coming from Tbilisi today, aren't you? Which is incredible. Can you tell me about where the story came from and how you came about making it at this moment?
My inspiration are my friends. My friends who have nothing to write in their CVs. And they are spending mostly their life in the kitchen in front of the gas stoves. This, my friends and me also, our generation is a kind of lost generation in our country, Georgia. You know that Georgia was the part of Soviet Union, and we were born and grown up in Soviet period, and we have chosen our professions as well in Soviet time. Those professions now do not respond to nowadays needs. So we left without professions, and my friends are all time complaining about this. And we have the feeling that society has no need of us. And so that was some kind of message to my friends that we have not to live in past. We have to live in present and move forward. And woman is beautiful at any age and always.
Absolutely. I really, even though it is a contemplation of a woman ending her life, I thought it was so full of life and so full of humor. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yes, I think the humor is the best way to say something and to prove. Myself, I look to my life and all tragicomic situations by humor. Otherwise, I'll be very unhappy. That's why I choose this way.
And it's very interesting how such heartbreak and happiness can, or humor can coexist so easily, you know. And can you talk to me just about the past in the present? Like, it was interesting how the woman was looking out of her window, looking at the youths coming up and contemplating the life that she hadn't had.
Yes, she, the only thing she has is the sweet memories of past, of her childhood. She has nothing more. No, she decided to end her life with suicide, but happily she's survived by gas workers and with humor. She has the feeling of self-humor anyway. And yes, she looks to the young people, and it's very sad, of course, but I think that she wants to join them after this, after that she decided not to go on to her decision. And this selfie, which she takes with this Gastove, means that she comes back to life, and she will continue.
And tell me about your lead actress. She was wonderful.
Yes, she is not actress. She's my friend.
Well,
but she's wonderful. Yes.
Thank you so much, Irine. That was I really enjoyed your film, and yeah, if you haven't had a chance to see it, please do. It's really great.
Thank you.
Moving on to Trudy's Goose and Sherry. Sherry Gauk. Sorry, I'm terrible with people's names today. Golke. Sorry. Sherry, can you tell us how this project came to your attention and why you decided to make a film about it?
Sure. Well, the project comes out of the Righteous Conversations project, and it is, we've been working for 10 years now. About 10 years ago, we realized that we were about to lose the last generation of Holocaust survivors, and that we had this unique opportunity to bring teens together with that generation so that they could hear the stories firsthand. So I was a high school film teacher and an artist and filmmaker, and collaborating with Samara Hutman, who couldn't be with us today, who's the director of Righteous Conversations Project. So we created this program, and every summer we bring teens and Holocaust survivors together. And sometimes the teens illustrate the stories through animated films, and sometimes they make microfilms or public service announcements that address social issues, kind of sort of lessons learned from the Holocaust and how those injustices might live today and how we can combat them. So this particular film, though, Trudy's Goose, is actually made not by teens, but by 4 of the artist mentors in the program. So Samara and myself, and then Lily Erickson and Laron Capel. Laron is in Israel and Lily's in Florida, and they are animators. So this particular story of Trudy's Goose is the story of a young girl having her bat mitzvah, which is the Jewish coming of age ceremony, and she meets a Holocaust survivor, and the survivor tells her story. And it's a story of generations and how the younger generation can learn from the older generation and the amazing things that they've gone through and how they've come through those challenges. But also the survivor herself is empowered by this young girl's sort of interest in her story and desire to make the world a better place.
Yeah, and why stop motion animation? It was absolutely beautiful, but yeah, was it a directorial decision prior to the interviews that you would make it stop motion, or was it something that was inspired by the interviews?
Yeah, I think that the genesis was just, we are fans of Laron Capel's work, and right when we started back in the early days, we saw a film that she had done about a relative who had survived the Holocaust, and she did it with clay, and we just thought it was so charming. So we don't always work in clay. Clay is actually a very difficult medium for teens to for the young people to learn. It has a learning curve. So this was an opportunity to work with Laron And then Lily Erickson, who's one of our teachers, jumped in and helped. And so, yeah, it gives the whole thing kind of a childlike quality, I think, is important, because it is a story sort of told through the views of a child.
It does. It's absolutely beautiful. And can you tell us about your two amazing protagonists? I want to know how Trudy is, and I know that she found Maya to be an unbelievable, wonderful human being, and I have no doubt that she is.
Yes. Well, Trudy is alive and well, and she is an amazing artist. She, the story talks about her first moments of being in a displacement camp after the Holocaust and being given beads by the Red Cross, and how she sewed a goose. Her mother taught her how to sew it, and it became this metaphor for her wings flying and transcending this experience of the Holocaust. But she has gone on to be a master embroiderer. She does amazing, huge works that are just so intricate and tell stories from her life. And Maya actually happens to be one of the co-organizers of an exhibition of Trudy's work that's traveling to different galleries and stuff. So yes, they're both well and continue to work together, and we're proud of the work that they're doing in the world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And finally, we're going to go to Wings, Jamie Weston and Carla Fraser. Could you talk us through the creation of this extremely moving tribute to land girls and the LGBTQ community from that era?
I think the original process sort of started with the documentary that I worked on back in 2014. That was basically about women through the ages in Essex and trying to get rid of that stereotype that Essex girls are stupid. So we looked back through different sort of periods of time. One of them was the Land Army, and I didn't actually work on that part. I worked on the witch trials. And when I was watching it back, I was looking at the land girls, and I was thinking, that's a really interesting part of history that we're not normally taught about. And there seems to be more that could be said about it. And so I just had a sort of an idea in my head that maybe two land girls fell in love, and just whirled around in my head for years, about three odd years, and I didn't really know what to do with it. And then one day it just all sort of fell into place, and I'd worked with Carla previously on a project, and I just was like, Carla, you look like the sort of girl who could be a land girl. What do you reckon? Do you want to help me make it? And she was like, yeah.
I've just realised, Carla, you were the star in it as well, weren't you?
Yeah, I was one of the girls, yeah. Yeah. That was a lot. So like Jamie said, obviously we wrote it together, and then I was in it. And so it was a lot on the shoot day, and we really were sort of like a two-person band who was just bringing people in and making it from sort of thin air. Yeah.
Can I just tell you what I really loved about it was that even though Carla, your character was married, she was happily married, and she happily fell in love with a woman as well. And I just loved that, because there was no kind of conflicts between someone being a heterosexual at one point in their life and someone being gay in another part of their life. And I just thought love is love. That was what I was really left with, and I thought that was quite a unique piece of storytelling in that respect.
I think we were really keen as well not to demonize anyone in the story, because that's not what that was about. And like you say, it was just we also realized as well that we thought you don't see, I think like someone was saying earlier, sort of LGBTQ stories with elderly people that end in a really positive way and are really beautiful. And we've realized from actually the feedback we've had from viewing it, it's lovely that it's a romance story that's sort of in a setup that we're used to when we see films and rom-coms, but actually it just happens to be two women. And we didn't realize how important and touching that would be, but it seems to be something that's just not done often enough.
And talk to me about Miriam Margulies coming on board, because I mean, she just that look. I won't tell it if you haven't seen it. I mean, hopefully people are watching, but I was in bits. Tell me about her coming on board.
People bring that up quite a lot, that look, actually, the tea moment. Yeah, so it just, basically we were out somewhere and we crossed paths with her, and we had the script with us, and we ended up speaking to her and building a bit of a friendship, and she was just incredibly passionate about the story, and it genuinely just happened like that. It was almost a bit of a film, the way that we got her involved. And then Virginia, Miriam really loves Virginia, so it was really beautiful for them to work together. And me and Jamie have done stuff for conservation before, so we mixed with Born Free and people like that, and that's how Virginia, whose charity is Born Free,
of course,
got on board. Yeah, but she was great fun, as you can imagine.
Absolutely, yeah. And Jamie, tell me about your decision not to have any dialogue.
It was one actually, because I'd just done sort of 3 features with a lot of dialogue in, and I really wanted to make a film and maybe have an easier time making it. So it's a bit like, we don't have any dialogue. It's slightly easier making films. And I went back to thinking, like, before I really knew what I was doing filmmaking, you make your first films, a lot of them are kind of like music video-y because they're just easy to make and you kind of enjoy them. And I was like, I'd just really like to make something that looks visually nice. And I was quite inspired by the introduction, the intro bit of the animation Up, where you sort of see these people's lives through, and it's silent, but it's like everyone remembers it. It's like, one of the best short mini things ever made. And I was like, oh wow, that really did it. I wonder if I could sort of be inspired by something like that and then use this idea. And I was like, oh, it doesn't necessarily need dialogue. And I love the animation Paper Man, the sort of Disney one.
Yeah.
And I was like, I really like these. Lovely to see a live action thing. I thought, let's just go for it. I mean, it's a short film, nothing to lose. It's not commercial. Someone's not going to buy it, so I don't need to worry about what distributors are going to worry about. Just make something that I think is going to be a nice project.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Do you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of The Snowman.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that bit when it goes into walking in the air was the bit, the look bit, So thank you so much, thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us today. That does bring us up to the end of our Q&A. I have a few announcements to make, if that's okay. First of all, don't forget to vote for the Audience Choice Award. There's a link on the WOFF website, so you can vote for your favourite film, and who knows, it may be one of our filmmakers here today who will take home the Emerald Life Audience Choice Award. Watch more festival films. There's plenty more on the WOFF website. We've got 50 more short films, 7 more filmmakers Q&As, and you can watch between the 26th and the 30th of September. And do not miss the virtual lecture from Dr. Francesca Sabandi from Cardiff University. That's going to be on the WOFF Festival website. Her lecture is on, it's a bit long one, but bear with me because it's worth it. Women over 50 on screen, from intersectional oppression in the industry to defying ageist agendas, and we'll be reflecting on the on-screen careers and star narratives of Viola Davis, Angela Bassett, Halle Berry, Pam Grier and Grace Jones. I mean, that just sounds phenomenal. So thank you one and all. So I'm going to get Paul, our production assistant, to put us all onto gallery, and then if you could all unmute yourselves and give a good goodbye from WOFF or from your film, and I just can't thank you enough for joining me today. Thank you. Paul, can you do the honours? Everyone unmuted?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, let's play it. Right, bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.